Welcome back to Otaku Flashback TV, your ultimate destination for the most epic anime stories and recaps. Today, we're diving into an absolutely incredible Isekai tale that will blow your mind. Picture this. A man dies and gets reborn as a baby in a magical world. But here's the twist. He's raised by three powerful undead beings who become his loving family. This story has everything: magic, sword fighting, family bonds, and an epic showdown with a demon king that will leave you on the edge of your seat. So grab your favorite snacks, hit that like button if you're ready for an amazing adventure, and let's jump right into this unforgettable journey. The story starts with someone floating in a strange place, feeling tired and hurt but scared to move toward a bright light. This person is then reborn as a baby in a magical world at a temple. He still remembers his old life, but the memories are fuzzy and unclear. He sees three scary-looking creatures around him: a skeleton, a mummy, and a ghost, so he cries loudly because he's terrified and thinks they want to hurt him. But instead, they take care of him and raise him. They give him the name Will, and when he's 6 months old, he can understand the language of this world, though he can't talk yet. The mummy takes him outside the temple for the first time, and Will starts crying because the outside world is so beautiful. At first, he thought he was in hell, being punished for living such a meaningless life, but he realizes he was wrong. This isn't punishment, but a gift from God. By age 3, he could already read and write like a grown-up. The ghost, whose name is Gus, teaches him about this world's history and magic. Will thinks Gus is a bit weird and pushy, but smarter than anyone he's ever met. Gus teaches Will about the power of words. He explains that words, whether spoken or written, have magic power. For example, if you write the word Ignis, it creates fire. But when you add the word erase, the fire goes out. The mummy then takes Will to a room with statues of the gods they worship: the god of justice and lightning, called Volt, the Earth Mother, called Mater, and the god of fire and technology, called Blaze. There are others too, but one statue catches his attention: the goddess of light, called Gracefeel, who is the daughter of the lightning god, Volt, and Earth Mother, Mater. The mummy, whose name is Mary, explains that the Earth Mother Mater is the god of raising children and the Earth's gifts, so she thinks Mater is the most important goddess. She adds that people in the countryside especially worship her. Will asks Mary if she prays to the Earth Mother every day, but she avoids answering by saying it's time to eat. At dinner, the skeleton, called Blood, tells Will that when he's older, he'll teach him to hunt. However, Gus wants Will to focus on learning magic first, saying he might be as much of a genius as himself. Blood rudely says, "What if he grows up to be an old miser with a big brain like you?" Will thinks Blood looks scary but likes him because he keeps things fun and friendly. Mary always brings bread with meals, so he asks her where she gets it, but she says it's a secret. The three of them keep many secrets, like why they live here, why there are no other humans except Will, and why they are undead. Will has never met anyone but these three since he was born. He has so many questions but can't bring himself to ask because he's keeping a secret too, that he's a human with memories from his past life. When Will gets older, he does hard training with Blood. Blood says, "We need to build your muscles and stamina first, because skills are useless without the strength to use them." Blood also teaches Will sword fighting and how to hunt in the forest. Gus teaches him magic. He works on how Will says words, telling him that words have different tones, and no one can say a word exactly the same way twice. Gus says he'll start by learning to use small magic skills well and accurately, but he needs to try his best to get by without using magic. Will asks him why, and Gus says, "Money." Will asks how a ghost can care so much about money, but Gus says money is important because it makes the world work. He says with money, you can solve anything without magic, and gets excited thinking about counting gold coins. Mary teaches Will about other races. She tells him that the three of them used to be humans, but before they died, they held on to strong emotions that made them make a deal with the god of the undead. The next day, Blood tells Will it's time for real training since he's almost 8 years old. Will says, "If I get hit by your crazy strength, I'm dead." Blood says he'll be fine and tests Will with a fight. Will can use both magic and sword fighting to put up a good fight against Blood. He uses word magic well, but because he doesn't have much fighting experience, he can't beat Blood. Blood says he has a long way to go, but is honestly surprised at how well he's doing. Will then learns that Gus was once called the Wandering Sage. He killed monsters, calmed angry rivers, and rediscovered old languages. Blood was once known as the War Ogre, and Mary was known as the daughter of Mater. Even though they're undead, Will thinks of them as his family. Blood is his foster father, Mary is his foster mother, and Gus is his foster grandfather. One day, when Will comes back from training, he sees Mary bringing bread from a room he was told not to enter. He's too curious and goes in anyway. He sees Mary's whole body surrounded by fire. Afraid that Mary will die, he rushes to save her, but badly hurts his arms. His little arms get severe third-degree burns, and Mary blames herself for keeping secrets. While his hands can heal, the scars will never go away. Gus explains that the bread is a gift from the Earth Mother Mater, which makes Will ask why Mary burned. Mary explains it's because she betrayed the Earth Mother Mater by becoming undead. The evil god of death, called Stagnate, is the Earth Mother Mater's enemy, and since the three of them made a deal with him, just touching Mater's holy presence makes them burn. 5 years pass, and Will is 13 years old, so his training becomes much harder. Blood catches a low-rank demon's dead body for Will to practice against, and he easily beats it with one slash that surprises Blood. Blood decides to speed up his training by taking him to a ruined city where humans and dwarves used to live, but now it's a dangerous place full of wandering undead. Blood leaves Will alone in a cave to test him. Several undead appear, but Will beats them all easily. He has to find the exit, but on the way he meets an undead Vascus demon, which is stronger than any enemy he's faced because they can use magic too. Will thinks about sneaking past it or going another way, but thinks about what Blood would do and bravely fights the Vascus. The Vascus demon tries to use magic, but with the lessons Gus taught Will, he can stop it and attacks with his sword. His sword breaks when it hits, but his attack kills the Vascus anyway. Since Will's sword is broken, he takes the magic spear from the undead he just killed, which was made by dwarves. Then Gus appears with a blank look on his face and uses his words to create a golem to fight Will. Will beats it easily, but is confused about why Gus is trying to kill him. Just as Will is about to kill Gus, he stops and says, "Hurting you would make me feel worse than dying myself." Gus then says sorry to Will and says he took that lesson too far. Will is shocked that Gus is trying to pass it all off as just a lesson, but doesn't say anything, and they go back to the temple. Will notices Gus hasn't talked about what happened in the cave and thinks there must be a reason why he won't talk about it, so he decides not to tell Blood or Mary. Gus then has a private talk with Will and tells him that Blood is going to challenge him to a serious fight. Gus wants Will to find a way to lose the fight without Blood noticing. Will wants to know why, but Gus won't tell him. Will gets very frustrated with Gus and tells him he can't help him with the fight, adding as he leaves, "I'll pretend I didn't hear anything you just said." Will runs to the room with the god statues, where Mary tells him that Blood worships the fire god Blaze, and Gus worships the wind god called Whirl. Blood promised Blaze that he would train every day and grow strong. Mary told Mater that she would live in a way that would honor her. Mary tells Will that Gus promised the Wind God that he would do whatever he wanted and enjoy life because he hates being controlled by anything. Years later, we see that Will has grown quite a bit. It's evening, and he just finished training with Blood. Blood brings some alcohol he made for them to drink, and after they get drunk together, Blood suggests they peek at Mary while she's changing. While they're spying on her, Will trips and opens the door. Mary asks Blood what the hell he gave Will to drink, and Blood avoids it by saying, "We were just gonna take a little peek while you changed." Will says, "I told him we shouldn't." However, a very angry Mary slaps him hard. The next day, Blood fights intensely with Will. He attacks like a storm, so Will finds it hard to get in a hit without being hit himself. Will then pulls an amazing move, using his shield to block Blood's sword so he can use it like a ramp to attack him. Just when Will was about to strike, Blood throws him away like a plastic bag. Will gives up, and Blood says having no muscles really is a problem. Blood then gives Will a surprise gift, the most powerful of all the demon blades he owns. Will is confused because he didn't even win, but Blood explains it's to mark his new independence. The sword is called Overeater, and if a living being is cut with this blade, the person using it gets life force back with each cut. He also says that the more he uses it, the more dependent he'll become until he's so weak that there's nothing left of him, and that's probably part of what makes it a demon blade. Now that Will is old enough, Mary and Blood decide to tell him the secrets about the king among demon kings who tried to take over their continent about 200 years ago. The demon kings led a great rebellion. An army of countless demons invaded the continent, so the place was crawling with demon kings and generals. These swarms of demons offered up huge amounts of flesh and blood in many great rituals to their god, the god of dimensions. The High King went on a rampage in their continent. Blood explains that his nicknames don't even come close to the truth, adding that his abilities were absolutely crazy. He could turn any blood he shed into soldiers, and any flesh cut from his body into commanders in unlimited amounts. In other words, he made demons from his own flesh and blood. Only blades could hurt him. Arrows and magic wouldn't even leave a mark. Blood says his weapon of choice was Overeater, which shocked Will. Mary explains that eventually he came to be called the High King, meaning the king of all kings. Blood says that even with the help of Gus's magic and Mary's blessing, he was no match for the High King. Because he is undead, he can't grow, so his sword skills can't get better. Since they couldn't kill the High King, Mary and Gus put a seal on him, and the High King was sealed deep under this land. We then discover that Gus, Mary, and Blood are bound to this city by their deal with Stagnate. If they agreed to join his army of undead, he'd kill all the demons in the city and let them defend the seal in their immortal bodies. Will figures out that he was meant to be a sacrifice to break the High King's seal. However, after the demons that brought him to them were killed, they decided to keep him and raise him like their own child. They thought humanity had gone extinct, but the fact that demons were able to bring him there means there must be a place with humans living nearby. So Will now knows why he's there. He's about to go into a nation of people who survived the Great Rebellion. A few moments later, Mary and Blood tell Will they love him and how he's a strong, smart boy. Will is confused about why it sounds like they're saying their final goodbyes. Then, suddenly, a demonic portal opens in the sky, and out comes the infamous High King. He asks if they've said their farewells because he's here to take the souls of Blood and Mary. Will is paralyzed, so he can't even move, but then Gus appears. He tells Will to take Blood and Mary and get out of here, declaring that he's going to stop the High King. Gus uses his strongest magic and gets rid of the High King, or so he thinks. Suddenly, Gus is paralyzed by the High King along with Mary and Blood. We discover that the High King split his strength into two bodies in case something like that happened. He leaves only Will free and suggests a deal. If he joins his undead army, he will let him live in peace forever with his undead family, and gives him until evening to think about it. At night, Will goes to see the High King to tell him his answer. Will bravely says, "I'm not giving you anything." So Stagnate summons his undead army. Will impresses Stagnate with his abilities, so he stops his undead army and asks again if he would join him because he's taken a liking to Will. He says, "I will welcome you as a general in my undead army," and cuts himself, telling Will to drink his blood. When it seems that Will is going to accept, he takes out the sword Blood gave him and attacks Stagnate. However, the High King releases a demon snake that bites Will, and suddenly he's transported to a strange place where it seems like he'd been there before. He finds the Goddess of Light and in the end makes a pact with her. The goddess will give her protection and guidance as long as he doesn't forget his resolve. Upon waking, Stagnate is disappointed that he made an oath with Gracefeel because he hoped Will would join his ranks. The undead attack Will, but they are no match for Overeater. Stagnate suddenly disappears using a cloud of dust, and Will is left wondering where he went. Gracefeel then appears and points Will toward the temple. Will then uses his speed ability to get over there as fast as possible after realizing that the High King is after Blood and Mary. When Will arrives, the High King is just about to kill Blood. Will tries to stop him but knows he won't make it in time. But suddenly a goddess appears who Will doesn't recognize, and after saying goodbye, he realizes that the Earth Mother never hated Mary for accepting Stagnate's deal. Mary starts to cry, and at that moment Stagnate casts a lightning spell at Will, but he stops it with his magic and takes advantage of this chance to charge with his sword and begins to hit Stagnate with a vicious series of attacks. Will ends up defeating the High King, and after we see him disappear completely, everyone is very excited and congratulates Will. But after they are about to leave, Mary and Blood fall to the ground. They tell Will that since they lost their attachment and refused to sell their souls to Stagnate, their time has come to an end. Will begins to cry and asks if there's anything he can do because he doesn't want to lose them. However, they calm him down and tell him there's nothing he can do, but they're proud of who he has become and want him to stay on the right path. Will then begins to see pictures above their heads from when they were human. Then Gus arrives, and the four of them enjoy their last moments together. After Blood and Mary die, the goddess takes their souls and they will go back into the cycle of death and rebirth. Comment below if you would like a part 2.
What an incredible journey! Will's story shows us the true power of unconditional love, sacrifice, and never giving up on family. Even when faced with impossible odds, he chose courage over fear and loyalty over self-preservation. That's the kind of heart that makes a true hero. If you enjoyed this recap, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing anime stories. Drop a comment below. What resonated with you most about Will's journey? Until next time, keep watching anime and stay awesome, Otaku Flashback family.